From Ticker News with Aaron Young, this is Ticker Today.
Hello, thanks for joining me. Pope Francis, the revered head of the Catholic Church, has passed away at the age of 88, closing a transformative chapter in Vatican history. Global communities today mourning the loss of Pope Francis, a spiritual beacon known for his compassion, humility and progressive vision. Today, tributes pouring in from world leaders honouring his legacy. The Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, a devout Catholic, was among the first to offer condolences. We'll hear from him. The Pentagon is under increasing scrutiny today as Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth faces backlash over a leaked signal chat exposing sensitive military information. And US VP JD Vance has arrived in India for a crucial 4-day visit amid escalating trade tensions between Washington and New Delhi. The markets have taken a tumble, the Dow experiencing a significant drop, nearly 972 points, as President Trump intensified his criticism of the Fed Chair Jerome Powell. So what does that mean for the Fed's independence? We'll be discussing that with Oz Sultan coming up soon. Today, you're watching Ticker Today, the latest news, business and tech shaping the world. Let's get started. First today, Pope Francis, the beloved leader of the Catholic Church, has died aged 88, his passing marking the end of an historic papacy. The world mourning Pope Francis, the spiritual giant who championed mercy, humility and inclusion.
Pope Francis, the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church, has passed away at the age of 88 after a battle with double pneumonia. His death was confirmed by the Vatican on Monday morning, with Cardinal Kevin Farrell announcing that the Pope returned to the home of the Father at 7:35 a.m. local time. Just weeks prior, Pope Francis had been hospitalised with bronchitis, and his appearance on Easter Sunday, blessing thousands in St. Peter's Square, left many hopeful of his recovery. His death has sent shockwaves across the globe, with world leaders and millions of faithful Catholics joining in mourning. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese offered condolences, highlighting Pope Francis's profound compassion for humanity. Opposition leader Peter Dutton called the Pope a figure of mercy and simplicity, embodying Christ's values of forgiveness. Known for his humility, Pope Francis will be remembered as the first Latin American Pope, the first Jesuit Pope, and for his outreach to the most vulnerable in society. His death marks the end of a transformative papacy that reached out to all corners of the world.
World leaders today paying tribute to Pope Francis. President Trump describing him as a good man who was a hard worker.
I just signed an executive order putting the flags of our country, all of them, all federal flags and state flags, at half-mast in honor of Pope Francis. So he was a good man, worked hard, he loved the world, and it's an honor to do that.
And the White House says the President will attend the funeral for Pope Francis. In Australia, Anthony Albanese, himself a practicing Catholic, led the world's tributes.
Today, the prayers of more than 1 billion people from all nations and every walk of life go with Pope Francis to his rest. Born in Argentina in 1936 and ordained a priest in 1969, Pope Francis' fellow cardinals elected him Pope in 2013. His was a papacy of firsts, the first Pope to hail from the Americas, the first Jesuit Pope, and the first to take the name of that great champion of the poor, St. Francis of Assisi. Pope Francis' compassion embraced all humanity, and today he will be mourned by Catholics and non-Catholics alike. He urged us to remember all we hold in common, and he asked the world to hear the cry of the earth, our common home. He invited world leaders to join him and, to quote him, emerge from the dark night of wars and environmental devastation in order to turn our common future into the dawn of a new and radiant day. He was very much a modernist.
Opposition leader Peter Dutton praised Pope Francis for following Christ's values.
On behalf of the Coalition, I express my condolences to Australians of Catholic and Christian faith upon the very sad news of the death of the 266th pontiff. His Holiness Pope Francis served God with the utmost devotion throughout his life. He was the first Pope from the Jesuit order and the first Latin American Pope. He lived frugally and simply. Above all else, he was driven by Christ's values of mercy and forgiveness. He emphasised those values in his last Christmas address, saying, and I quote, "God's mercy can do all things. It unties every knot. It tears down every wall of division. God's mercy dispels hatred and the spirit of revenge. With God, may Pope Francis rest in peace."
Pope Francis was the first Latin American pontiff and a champion of the poor. His legacy as the People's Pope will be defined by humility, reform and compassion for the world's most vulnerable. Pope Francis's deep connection to grassroots communities allowed him to raise global awareness about the struggles of disadvantaged people in Latin America and beyond. He chose the name Francis in honour of the 13th century saint who felt called to rebuild the church with simplicity and humility. Jorge Mario Bergoglio brought to the leadership of the church a distinctly Latin American perspective, one shaped by experiences in poor communities and the unique culture and spirit of his people. That influence was seen in tangible ways. He tackled three major issues head-on during his papacy. First, he initiated reform of the Vatican Bank, a task long overdue and never fully addressed by his predecessors. Secondly, he confronted the church's sexual abuse crisis. He took a firm stance on the abuse of power, sexual misconduct and violations of conscience committed by clergy within the Catholic Church. Because of his humility, advocacy and action, Pope Francis earned the nickname the People's Pope. And now to live pictures from the Vatican as crowds gather outside. Francis, who suffered from chronic lung disease and had part of one lung removed as a young man, was admitted to Gemelli Hospital on February 14 this year for a respiratory crisis that then developed into double pneumonia. He spent 38 days there, the longest hospitalisation of his 12-year papacy. His precarious health had prompted a wave of prayers and well wishes from Catholics right around the world. The Church will now enter a 9-day mourning period before a new pontiff is chosen by the College of Cardinals in a secretive election in the Sistine Chapel known as a conclave. The rest of the day's news now. The Pentagon is facing mounting pressure as Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth is embroiled in another controversy surrounding a newly surfaced signal chat revealing sensitive military details. Allegations of chaos have now emerged, with a former advisor suggesting Hegseth may be replaced after multiple high-level resignations at the department. Critics claim Hegseth's team is spreading misinformation and creating dysfunction within the Pentagon, which is problematic for President Trump's national security objectives. Amidst the turmoil, supporters argue Hegseth is dedicated to advancing the president's agenda, and Hegseth now turning on the media.
See, this is what the media does. They take anonymous sources from disgruntled former employees, and then they try to slash and burn people and ruin their reputations. Not going to work with me, because we're changing the Defense Department, putting the Pentagon back in the hands of warfighters, and anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter.
China has issued a stern warning pledging to retaliate against countries aligning with the US to isolate it amid escalating trade tensions. The response follows US plans to leverage tariff negotiations with President Trump, recently pausing some tariff hikes for 90 days while increasing duties on Chinese goods. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce stressed that any deal reached at China's expense would trigger strong countermeasures from Beijing. Recent moves include hefty tariffs on American imports and restrictions on exports of critical minerals. US Vice President J.D. Vance has begun a pivotal 4-day visit to India, meanwhile, coinciding with growing tensions over trade tariffs there. As the US threatens to elevate tariffs on Indian goods, both nations are eager to solidify a trade agreement. Vance, along with his family, received a ceremonial welcome in New Delhi, including a military salute and cultural visits to local sites. The trip is expected to enhance the India-US partnership, showcasing the significance of bilateral relations amidst global shifts in power. It's been a pretty tough day for the markets. The Dow Jones experiencing a significant drop, nearly 1,000 points Monday, as President Trump intensified his criticism of the Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, raising concerns about the bank's independence. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq also fell sharply, major tech stocks like Tesla and Nvidia contributing to the decline. Investor confidence wavered further amid stalled global trade talks, with tensions between the United States and China escalating. The dollar hit a 3-year low, while gold prices soared to record highs. Experts warn that prolonged uncertainty over tariffs could pose challenges for corporate earnings and market stability over the coming months.